In this video, we're going to talk about frame battles, which is absolutely the key to success with women. First of all, what exactly is the frame between a man and a woman? Basically, whenever you interact with anyone, whether it's one person or multiple people, underneath the surface, there's like an invisible battle going on an emotional and psychological level of who has the dominant frame, like who is reacting more to who, and who has more influence over the others and over the situation as a whole. So it's not just with girls, but for example, when guys kind of trash talk and make fun of each other, what that really is establishing this kind of pecking order, which is basically just a natural function of being a social animal. But this is also especially true when it comes to sexual attraction and interactions with women, and it's at the core of how sexual attraction actually works. Basically, a girl needs to feel that she's in your frame as a man in order to be attracted to you. So for example, if you are confident when you interact with her, so you're not self-conscious or nervous or trying to live up to her standards or in some way reacting to the pressure of facing her judgment, then it signals to her that you basically have higher status than she does because you're not reacting to what you feel on an unconscious level is the threat of backlash or retaliation from her overall social world. So if this is the case, then she will end up reacting more to you than you are to her, and she will basically get drawn into your overall world and your way of seeing things and into your frame. But if it's the other way around and you are reacting more to her, then it signals to her on an unconscious level that you have lower status than she does and that you are basically inferior to her social world and inferior to other guys who are also competing to be with her, and she's basically just not going to be attracted to you no matter what you do. And I've explained this all in more detail in another video called The Psychology of Female Attraction. I'll put a link in the description, but for now what I want to focus on is what does this actually mean in practice, in the real world. So in this video we're going to focus on three things. So first of all, how the frame is communicated, and then secondly, how it is established and reinforced in actual interactions, and then third, how to win the frame battles so that she will be attracted to you and things can move forward and progress to actually becoming sexual between you and her. So first of all, about how the frame is communicated, first I just want to clarify what this doesn't mean, because I watched part of a video recently of someone trying to explain it, but he himself didn't really seem to understand it. The example that he gave was of a guy in a long-distance relationship who ended up moving to her city to be together with her as an example of him going into her frame. And although that kind of thing is probably a symptom of him being in her frame, it is also possible for you to enter into her environment or her world and still maintain your frame in relation to her. Really, what the frame actually is something that is more in the moment, that affects you on an emotional level, and it's communicated through micro behaviors in your body language, your facial expressions, and vocal tonality, and stuff like that. But all these outward expressions are actually symptoms of your inner state. So basically, what it really comes down to is, are you self-conscious or are you confident? Like, do you feel that you are within her eyes and her perspective and her judgment, or do you feel that she is within your eyes and your world? This feeling actually originates from predator-prey psychology in nature, where prey will feel self-conscious and that they are within the eyes and the perspective and the world of the predator. This has evolved over hundreds of millions of years to the point that now as humans we feel the same basic thing in relation to other people or to society as a whole. For example, I'm sure you've experienced this kind of thing where you're like walking down the street by yourself and then there's a group of people that you have to walk by and suddenly you feel self-conscious, like you are within their world, like it feels like they're looking at you and judging you, and maybe it even feels awkward to walk. Like what was natural just a second ago, now you have to consciously think how to move your legs. And I could give a million other examples, but I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. Just this feeling of being self-conscious, like you are within the perspectives of other people, which basically affects everything, and it can make you feel awkward and uncomfortable and nervous, and like you just want to escape from that feeling. So if you feel this way towards a girl where you're self-conscious and you feel like she's judging you and like you are within her overall perspective, this is you being in her frame. And if you feel this way, it'll cause you to be either nervous or suppressed and not able to think clearly and stuff like that, or try to show off and live up to what you think are her standards. Basically, it can affect your outward behavior in various different ways depending on the situation and depending on your personality. But the core of it comes down to, are you self-conscious, like in these examples, or are you confident and looking at her and the overall situation from your own perspective and expressing yourself from within? This is the basic foundation, and really this is at the very core of sexual attraction. But how is this frame established and reinforced in actual interactions with girls? So this brings us to the frame battles. Basically, during the course of your interaction with her, there are going to be moments when you are tested. And a lot of this happens just naturally. It's not like she's purposely trying to test you or anything, but it basically happens when you feel that she might be judging you in some way. So for example, this could even be something as simple as like her asking you what you do for a living or what you did last weekend, where she's asking you a simple question, but it's possible that you might feel the pressure of her judgment based on your response. Like maybe you didn't do anything last weekend and you're afraid that she'll judge you for being like a loser with no friends or no social life or something like that. So if you start feeling self-conscious like this, even if you were confident on the surface just a second before that, now that will shift and she'll be able to feel that, because your behavior will change in subtle ways where you'll either start to act self-conscious or try to like explain yourself, or in some other way it's going to shift your behavior. So if this happens, it's like you failed a very basic test that was not even really meant as a test. So there's just this like natural kind of frame battle that's always going on where you're confronted with her judgment and opinions in response to everything that you say and do. But she is also confronted with the same thing, where you will also test her without even realizing it. But there are also more blatant tests which involve a bit more pressure. For example, from you, it might be like if you tease her or make fun of her or challenge her opinions, and she will do exactly the same thing to you. Or maybe she'll give you some kind of shit test, like some little insulting comments, or at some point she might like really push back on something that you say with an opposing viewpoint. So if any of these tests trigger an insecurity or makes you start to feel self-conscious, then you will basically fail the test and lose the frame. Or there can also be something that I call anti-shit tests, where she will actually give you validation, like compliment you, and if that sort of animates you in an obvious way that affects your behavior, and she'll be able to feel that and likewise feel that you are actually in her frame and sort of feeding off of her validation. And the frame can also be affected by the way that you react to the overall environment around you. So for example, if you feel self-conscious in a place where she is totally comfortable and confident, then it's like you are in her world and you need her validation and protection in that environment. But if it's the other way around, then it's like you are bringing her into your world where she will have your protection. So basically, there are many different specific ways that the frame can be established, and it's largely just a natural thing that happens over the course of interacting with her. But the make or break points happen with these various different tests that you will face all along the way. And that brings us to the final part of this video of how to actually win the frame battles. The simple answer is to just not be emotionally affected or react to the test. So in other words, whenever you are confronted with the pressure of her opposing judgment in whatever form that comes in, it does not cause you to become self-conscious. Almost like it just bounces off of you, so you maintain your positive frame where you feel that she is in your world. So for example, with the very basic tests that I was talking about before, like she just asks you a basic question, like what you do for a living, you just need to to respond to that without feeling like you're being judged, like just carry on the conversation where you're just expressing yourself without feeling self-conscious. And it's the exact same thing with all the more obvious tests as well. If they don't affect you, then it basically just becomes part of the overall interaction, and maybe you won't even notice that there was any sort of test, or it'll be like a playful thing where it just seems like a joke, or it'll just seem like part of the conversation. But this is easier said than done. In order to actually do this in practice, you need the confidence inside of yourself so that the opposing judgment actually doesn't affect you. Like, this is not something that you can just fake. You actually need the confidence inside of yourself to back it up. As far as how to build this confidence, this is something that needs to take place over time by continuously facing and confronting these kinds of tests and building up the strength inside of yourself so that they no longer affect you. I actually have an entire course on this, including specifically everything to do with meeting girls and attraction and dating. You can click on the link in the description if you're interested. But then it's not just a matter of not being affected by the tests. Like, if she pushes back on something that you say, then you need to reassert your frame and your perspective and opinion in a way that draws her into your line of thinking. So for example, like if she disagrees with you about something, you need to basically win the argument, but win it in a way where you actually convince her of your perspective rather than just like putting her down or something like that. But there can be exceptions. Like, it's not necessary to win every argument or anything like that. It's kind of hard to give broad generalizations like this because a lot of it depends on the specific situation and the specific conversation, and there are many different ways that you could respond and pass exactly the same test. What it really comes down to is the underlying frame that we were talking about earlier, which is more like a state of consciousness. And in truth, everything that we've talked about in this video is kind of surface level, like the external behaviors and feelings, but on a deeper level, the frame between a man and a woman actually takes place basically on a different level of consciousness, where the connection between you and her involves deeper underlying psychological forces. And it's possible to tap into this and develop a kind of sexual magnetism where you can draw her into your world and into your frame on this deeper level in a way that's almost like telepathy. And I just made a video going into a lot more detail about this. So if you want to learn more about these deeper aspects and this deeper psychology, then just click on the video that should be on the screen right now.